Hey everyone, welcome to Broadband Deployment News. It's not always the large MSOs or the really huge telcos that are providing broadband in wide swaths of America. In some cases, it's smaller companies. I'll be right back and we're going to talk about what's happening in Kansas. Thanks for joining me. Rick Uzzi here with Broadband Deployment News. So I saw this story, and this was something that was originally, I think, ran on NPR. But I've seen it show up in a couple of places, basically the same story, kind of like a wire service story, but in this case, NPR. It talks about how small companies bring fast internet to rural places that telecom giants ignore, and one of our customers is actually featured in here, so that also made it very interesting to me. So I thought I'd read through a little bit of the story. I'll go ahead and link to the story at the end because I'm not going to go through the whole thing, but I just thought this was interesting. It brings up a lot of good points about why it is so difficult in rural parts of the country, what the challenges are, and what companies like this are doing that are positioned very well to be able to help bridge that digital divide. So again, how small companies are bringing fast internet. Installing fiber optic internet in sparsely populated places like western Kansas is extremely expensive, even with government subsidies, but some smaller local broadband providers are finding ways to make it work where the big national companies have not. Gives an example of here one of the challenges. So with a family of 5 and a farming operation run, Clay Scott's home internet didn't come close to cutting it. Pulling up a weather page in a browser could take so long it produced an error message rather than a forecast. He tried installing a wireless security system, but it sucked up so much bandwidth that nothing else in the house would work. Once when his son needed to email a school project, the rest of the family had to log off just to give their connection enough capacity to send it. That sounds like the old dial-up days, but this would have been on something like DSL. It says, like many rural Americans, Scott's home in southwest Kansas connected to the internet over an old copper wire. So again, probably DSL service, something maybe 10 megabits per second, maybe less when you considered how maybe the distance, longer distances in these areas, and DSL slows down the further you go. So who knows what they were getting. Better than nothing update on century-old telephone technology that struggles to handle Zoom calling, video streaming, or a myriad of other internet uses that people in big cities largely take for granted. An estimated 42 million Americans still don't have high-speed internet, or what most people today simply think of as internet. So the high-speed definition today is 25 by 3, so that should be what that number would be based on. And they say an estimated, I've heard anywhere from 20 million to 40 plus million. I don't think anybody knows. We're going to have a much better idea when the FCC maps come out for 2 reasons. Number one, that data will be much, much more accurate than we have right now. And number 2, by that time, there's going to be a lot more people that are going to have broadband because broadband's going in everywhere right now, including, as we're seeing here, in Kansas. So more and more people are getting access to speeds over 25 by 3 every day, and again, we're going to have more accurate data soon. So this 42 million number is I'm assuming much lower than that now, and it's going to be even lower by the time the FCC maps come out. With fiber optic cable installation costing tens of thousands of dollars per mile, it's unlikely that big national providers will ever find a way to make money or even avoid losses by hooking up people like Scott in rural Kansas. And that's the big issue, right? So that is what we are trying to overcome. We're trying to overcome issues like this where you've got rural populations, people spread out over many, many miles, and then we're also trying to make it more affordable for people, whether they be low-income in rural areas or urban areas. We're trying to improve adoption, but frankly, you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make the horse surf, as I've said in the past. So you can put broadband in, but some people just aren't going to do it. They may be perfectly happy on their phone. They might not need a wired connection. So I think adoption is less of an issue. There are some populations that it's a little bit harder for them to use, and they're trying to train those people, do what they can. But I think the big issues are affordability and obviously access. And here they've got some nice pictures in here, and most of these, I think they all maybe are from a company called IdeaTek, which is another company in Kansas that's putting in broadband here. It's a fixed wireless tower that these guys are using there. That can connect farm equipment to the internet, so that's kind of cool. But a growing number of small towns, farms, and ranches are finally joining the digital age with help from small local companies that have more of a stake in the rural areas they call home. They found ways to stretch state and federal subsidies to strategically install high-capacity wires to homes, that would be fiber, or construct over-the-air relays, fixed wireless, to bring more robust speeds to remote outposts, town by town, farmstead by farmstead. A recent survey study from the University of Kansas found that 95 Kansas zip codes, representing nearly 90,000 people, don't have internet speeds that meet the federal definition of broadband. Again, that would be anything 25 by 3 or better. KU economics professor Donna Gaither, who is the study's principal investigator, said the reason is obvious. The economics of connecting such remote areas don't work out on paper. It's really expensive to provide high-speed internet to a few people, Gaither said. That's why you don't have the infrastructure out there. And again, that's what we are seeing. And if you look here on this map, they're showing these orange, goldish areas here are 25 by less than 25 down. So again, these do not meet the broadband standard. And then you've got less than 100 down in these lighter yellow areas right there. And then the white, is that right? Yeah, that's the lighter yellow area I'm looking at on my screen over here. It looks white. So the lighter yellow area is less than 100. So if you're looking at the BEAD program, the definitions that they have in there are unserved and underserved. So unserved would be anything less than 25 meg down. So these orangish gold areas are unserved. Anything less than 100 by 20 is considered underserved. So that would be these light yellow areas here. Maybe these white areas are, oh yeah, these areas are unknown, these hash marked areas, and then these white areas were probably, I guess, known, and maybe these are over that speed. So you can see that's a lot of territory that's considered underserved or unserved right there in Kansas. Don't know how up to date this is, because again, these providers have been putting fiber in the ground pretty quickly. It says here, but local providers like Ulysses-based telecom cooperative Pioneer are finding ways to make the numbers work 1 mile at a time. Pioneer is our customer. We provide managed broadband services to them, diagnostics for their broadband network as well. Pioneer CEO Catherine Moyer said the co-op's goal is to connect everyone within its roughly 5,000 square mile footprint in southwest Kansas. To do that, the co-op needs to get creative, stretching the financial feasibility limits with business plans that the AT&Ts of the world might scoff at. But she said the fact that Pioneer isn't AT&T is exactly what allows the co-op that flexibility. While we need to make money to continue to exist, we don't answer to Wall Street, Moyer said. We don't answer to shareholders. We have member owners. So they are a co-op. They're member owned. So they have less pressure to make a profit. They do need to make a profit to keep the lights on, like she says, to be able to exist. And that's the case with any entity, even though, you know, we're talking about entities being, let's say, not for profit, like a municipality, a co-op, someone like that. They still have to make a profit, and they have to make over what their costs are in order to pay the bills, in order to pay their staff, those kinds of things. They just don't have as much pressure to turn a bigger profit, I guess you could say, in addition to what they need to do to keep the lights on. So let's see here. So Christopher Ali, a University of Virginia professor and the author of the book Farm Fresh Broadband, said this dynamic explains why local providers like Pioneer offer the strongest option for wiring rural America. As opposed to national companies like AT&T or Comcast, their long-term business goals hinge on how to turn, say, $20,000 into a mile of fiber optic cable in the countryside rather than a return to stockholders. So again, these guys local, they are looking at the community, and they are part of the community, and that is a big part of what's driving them, not returning a profit to Wall Street. If you think about it as an investment in the community versus how much time you're going to need to recoup your return on investment, Ali said, that's two very different ways of looking at that $20,000. Even though a local company like Pioneer and AT&T might both be telecom providers, Ali said they actually have an entirely different business model, or business models. That's true. Here you see somebody laying fiber in the middle of a field. For rural companies, seeing that region survive and thrive is the return on the investment and their best hope for staying in business. We interact with our customers on a daily basis, at church, at the grocery store, at the high school football game, Moyer said, so there's an interest in seeing communities succeed. And these are exactly the kind of companies that we began serving. So when we started out back in 1995, we actually existed before that as an ISP, a dial-up ISP, but when we started providing wholesale internet services and managed services to other internet providers, it was companies like this. It started out being just independent ISPs who were offering dial-up because they could do that. And then once everything was more restricted to cable modem service and DSL service, then we were working with small cable companies, small telephone companies that were in these rural areas that we were able to assist and bring economies of scale to them so that we could make their organizations more efficient and provide a lot of the kinds of tools and services that only the big guys had. So we started in this business. So what they're saying is absolutely true. These folks live and work and play in these communities, and when they go to church or the grocery store, they're seeing their customers. They want to make sure that everything's working properly, that everybody's happy. They want to make sure everybody's got good service, both from the standpoint of fast service as well as good customer service. That's why our help desk services, 24/7 help desk services, are very popular with our affiliate customers, because we take that on for them, and that's just another thing that we can do for them and do well. Pioneer started in 1950 when local farmers banded together to bring telephone service to the sparsely populated corner of Kansas. Now has around 100 employees and 10,000 broadband customers, and roughly 3 out of every 4 customers are connected to fiber internet. So these guys have done a good job of upgrading their copper plant to fiber. They're 3/4 of the way there, it looks like. And they're obviously going to be expanding in other areas as well. For those who aren't, Moyer said, Pioneer plans to build fiber lines to reach them over the next several years. For example, the co-op is about to finish upgrading the town of Santa Ana from coax cable to fiber. So that's right, I forgot, these guys do, they have DOCSIS as well. So they've got our DOCSIS diagnostics in addition to the fiber that they're offering. That will give the community of around 1,000 people internet speeds of up to 250 megabits per second. Just over an hour's drive from Santa Ana, another small southwest Kansas town, Buckland, population 727, just got its own gigabit speed broadband installed a few weeks ago by another local provider, IdeaTek. I looked IdeaTek up, and they are actually a company that started back in 1999 just to be able to provide broadband internet to places like Kansas. So they've, unlike Pioneer that started out in the 50s as a telephone company and has, naturally made the transition to broadband, these guys started in 1999 and have been working to be able to provide broadband in the areas that they cover. Like Pioneer, IdeaTek focuses on installing fiber to these rural places because it's future-proof with the speed and bandwidth to stay relevant for decades. While it may cost more, Friesen said, our position is that you need to do it right to really bridge the digital divide. Again, here's an IdeaTek truck installing fiber. And then the last 10%, but installing that fiber in a far-flung place like western Kansas is hard. Even if a rural company can get funding for a project, finding the team of 30 or 40 workers it takes to make it happen can be a challenge. Moyer said Pioneer had to pull in a team from the upper Midwest to handle its fiber installation in Santa Ana. For another fiber project in Garden City, got a team from Oklahoma. And small providers like Pioneer have to compete with bigger projects from out of state just to land those teams. It's only going to get more competitive as a new wave of federal broadband money goes out. That's true. Everybody's building right now, Moyer said, so it's a good problem. But it's also tough to find the people to do it. And that would be, in addition to just having a lot of people, just the demand on this, then you've got the supply chain issues. You've got, and it mentions that here, you've just got the fact that a lot of people have not gone back to work. So it says here, recent supply chain problems have made equipment, like the fiber itself, difficult to get. Moyer said supplies that used to take 30 days to get might now take 250 days. I know people like Corning are working hard to try to shrink that lead time, so hopefully that will improve, especially as we get closer to, as we're seeing federal dollars right now coming out in some of the prior programs, and we're going to have more money coming out sometime spring to early summer next year from the BEAD program. We need to get that taken care of. Then there's a sheer geographic distance to cover with those fiber wires, and you can see here this is Pioneer's service area. So you can see the size of the areas that they're covering, all the counties in Kansas here that they are covering, and all the little towns. Moyer said that out of Pioneer's 5,000 square mile footprint, only about 15 square miles are considered towns, and wiring the remaining 4,985 square miles where customers are spread far and wide becomes way more expensive per capita. Imagine a graph that shows how broadband installation costs increase as the connection points grow farther apart. When it comes to connecting that last 10% of Kansans in the most remote areas, where a single home or farm might be several miles from any other connection point, that graph line accelerates upward exponentially. Those expenses are just astronomical, Friesen said. There's just simply no way to do it without some level of subsidy. So again, that's speaking of the federal dollars that are being made available, state dollars, either federal money going to the states or states having their own funds as well. That's really helping, and that's why this is needed here, because it's just way too expensive for the free market to do this where it would be reasonably priced. So an AT&T and a Comcast can't come in there and just be building connections to customers where there's several miles per customer. It just doesn't make economic sense. But this way we can get this infrastructure built. And then the challenge becomes, it's more costly to maintain these customers once you have them. So that's just something that needs to be taken into account as well. But really the biggest hurdle is getting the connection to the home. Once it's there, if it's a fiber connection, that's another reason to do fiber, is there's much less maintenance than there would be, let's say, in a DOCSIS plant or even fixed wireless. With fixed wireless, you've got storms and things and antennas. It's just a harder service to maintain. It can be put up quicker, and it can be less costly to get it going, but it's also something that has to be maintained. And fiber really is future-proof, at least at this point, as far as in the future as we can see, and certainly lower maintenance costs there. So that's it. There's more to this article, and I will go ahead and link to that at the end of this broadcast. But I thought that was a good highlight of the issue, the challenge. And here's two companies in Kansas that are doing a great job at bringing broadband to their communities. And again, these are companies that live, work, and play in these areas, so they are heavily invested in the communities, and they are out to do this. Again, they need to make enough money to keep the doors open and the lights on, but they're in this for their communities, and they are doing the best they can for those people that they work with, work around, and live with there. So thanks for joining me. If this was interesting or helpful, go ahead and click the like button if you would. If you're not subscribed, click the subscribe button, and then go ahead and click the little bell, and you'll be notified when I'm live. Thanks for joining me, and I will see you next time. Bye-bye.